Somewhere right now, under a quiet street in the East Bay, a man is pumping gas. A woman is waiting for a bus. A kid is doing homework on a kitchen table. None of them know they're standing on top of a loaded gun. It has no trigger, no fuse you can see. Just a hairline crack in the earth, locked in place, holding back a force that's been building for 150 years. Scientists gave it a name, the Hayward Fault. And recently, using one of the most powerful supercomputers ever built, they didn't just study it. They detonated it, digitally, down to the second, to find out exactly what happens when it finally lets go. What they discovered wasn't just dangerous, it was strange. A disaster that doesn't strike everywhere the same way, but picks its victims block by block, depending on what's buried beneath their feet. This is what the simulation found. To understand why this matters, you have to understand what's actually underneath the East Bay. California sits on the edge of two tectonic plates, grinding past each other in slow motion. Most of that motion happens along the famous San Andreas, out toward the coast. But running directly beneath some of the most densely populated cities in Northern California, Fremont, Hayward, Oakland, Berkeley, is its quieter, more dangerous cousin. Geologists call faults like this tectonic time bombs. Trenches dug across the Hayward Fault reveal a buried history, a record of major ruptures stretching back centuries. That record shows this fault breaks, on average, roughly every 140 to 170 years. The last major rupture was in 1868. Do the math, and you land on an uncomfortable truth. This fault isn't just due for another major earthquake, it's overdue. And unlike a storm you can watch forming on radar, a fault like this gives no warning. Pressure simply builds, silently, year after year, until the rock can't hold anymore. For decades, predicting what that moment would actually feel like was little more than educated guesswork. Earthquakes are chaotic, and the ground itself behaves differently from one neighborhood to the next. But recently, a team of researchers did something remarkable. They built the earthquake before it happened. Using a supercomputer, scientists modeled a magnitude 7.0 rupture along the full length of the Hayward Fault, not as a rough estimate, but as a high-resolution simulation, layer by layer, second by second. They didn't just model the fault. They modeled the ground itself, every layer of rock, sediment, and soil for miles around. Because it turns out, the fault line is only half the story. The other half is what the shaking has to travel through to reach you. Picture it, deep underground, stress that has accumulated for a century and a half finally exceeds what the rock can withstand. A crack begins to slip, tearing along the fault like a zipper releasing, traveling at thousands of miles an hour. In the simulation, researchers can watch the energy radiate outward in real time, a glowing wavefront racing through a digital bay area. Within seconds, that energy reaches the surface, and what happens next depends entirely on geography. In places where bedrock sits close to the surface, the hills above Berkeley, the higher ground around Oakland, the shaking is sharp and violent. The simulation shows powerful directional pulses, short, intense jolts, capable of striking buildings like a battering ram, especially structures sitting close to the fault line itself. It's shaking that doesn't give structures time to flex. It hits hard, and then, within the first violent stretch of motion, it's largely over. But travel just a few miles inland, and the story changes completely. This is the part of the simulation that surprised even the people who built it. Beneath places like the Livermore Valley sits something most residents never think about: a deep basin, filled over millions of years with soft sediment, sand, clay, ancient soil, layered like a bowl beneath the modern city above it. Solid bedrock transmits seismic energy quickly and lets it pass through. Soft sediment behaves completely differently. It traps energy. It bends it. It bounces seismic waves back and forth along the basin's walls, the way sound echoes inside a canyon. The simulation showed something almost hard to believe. While the violent shaking near the fault might last only seconds, the trapped waves inside a deep basin like Livermore Valley could keep rattling the ground for nearly 2 full minutes afterward. 2 minutes of sustained, rolling motion, long after the rupture itself has finished. It's the geological equivalent of a bell that won't stop ringing. This single discovery has changed how scientists think about earthquake risk. Distance from the fault is not the same as safety. A neighborhood 10 miles away, sitting on the right, or wrong, kind of ground, can experience longer, more punishing shaking than a neighborhood built almost directly above the rupture itself. This is the unsettling brilliance of the simulation. It reveals that the big one isn't one earthquake, it's dozens of different earthquakes happening at once, in completely different ways, just blocks apart. In Oakland and Berkeley, close to the rupture, the danger is sudden violence. Sharp, directional shockwaves, moving through dense urban cores, built generations before modern earthquake codes existed. Out in basin communities like Livermore, the danger is endurance. Long, rolling waves that test the patience of every structure standing above them, long after residents elsewhere have already stopped feeling the ground move. In between, across the patchwork of soil types that make up the East Bay, the experience shifts block by block. Some neighborhoods, built on firm ground, might come through with moderate damage. Others, just a short drive away, but sitting above soft, water-saturated soil, could face a dramatically more severe event from the very same earthquake. This is why planning built around a single number, magnitude 7.0, has always been incomplete. The real risk isn't written in the magnitude alone. It's written in the geology beneath every single neighborhood, one map layer at a time. And across this stretch of California, that map covers millions of people, residents in dense urban centers, commuters crossing highways and rail lines built decades ago, hospitals, schools, and emergency services, all depending on infrastructure that's now being tested virtually, before reality has the chance to test it for real. Here is the part of this story that should give you hope rather than dread. For most of human history, earthquake preparedness has been reactive. Engineers learning hard lessons only after the ground already moved. This simulation flips that order entirely. For the first time, scientists and city planners can see, block by block, exactly where the ground will amplify shaking, exactly where structures will face the longest sustained motion, and exactly where reinforcing matters most. That means resources can be directed before the rupture, not after it. Older buildings sitting above amplification zones can be strengthened. Critical infrastructure, water lines, bridges, hospitals, can be prioritized based on real, modeled risk instead of rough guesswork. In a very real sense, this simulation is a kind of time travel, a chance to study tomorrow's disaster today, while there's still time to change the outcome. The Hayward Fault hasn't moved yet, not in this telling of the story, but somewhere beneath the East Bay. The pressure that has been building since 1868 is still building right now. As you watch this, science can't stop a fault from slipping. No simulation can hold back tectonic plates that have been grinding against each other for millions of years. What it can do is take away the element of surprise. It can tell millions of people, in startling detail, what their own street, their own basin, their own bedrock will do when the moment finally comes. The clock beneath California has been running for a century and a half. We don't know the hour it stops, but for the first time, we know almost exactly what happens the second it does.